and behavior, a pattern of unstable relationships. Borderline personality disorder usually begins by early adulthood. The condition seems to be worse in young adulthood and may gradually get better with age. Signs and symptoms may include an intense fear of abandonment, even going to extreme measures to avoid real or imagined separation or rejection, a pattern of unstable, intense relationships, such as idealizing someone one moment and then suddenly believing the person doesn't care enough or is cruel, rapid changes in self-identity and self-image that include shifting goals and values and seeing yourself as bad or as if you don't exist at all, impulsive and risky behavior such as gambling, reckless driving, unsafe sex, spending sprees, binge eating or drug abuse, or sabotaging success by suddenly quitting a good job or ending a positive relationship. Suicidal threats or behavior or self-injury, often in response to fear of separation or rejection. Wide mood swings lasting from a few hours to a few days, which can include intense happiness, irritability, shame, or anxiety, and ongoing feelings of emptiness.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to Dependency. Right here on I-95.5 FM, live on the Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Natasha, for opening with that very poignant explanation on borderline personality disorder. And as you were reading it, I don't know who listening identified with what you just read. One thing that touched a nerve, a pattern of unstable, intense relationships, such as idolizing someone one moment and then suddenly believing the person doesn't care enough or is cruel. And I want to believe that this could extend outside of personal relationships too as well.
Yes, I imagine so.
Feelings of emptiness. This morning, people, we are going to deal with a topic that's hidden in plain sight, which is self-harm. And correlated with childhood trauma. And for those of you who saw that incident at the Rose Hill Primary, that we think, and Professor Hutchinson will explain that, because we've heard Mr. Hanif Benjamin speak about it several times, about trauma and how it can affect you in your adult life. That's what those children experience, including the teacher. And we're going to deal with that later on and compare notes on two situations, one here and one in the U.S. You're going to see and hear what happened when a child, 10-year-old, had to deal with that similar situation, not similar, worse, because she was actually trapped in a classroom with dead bodies and a gunman, and how she dealt with it, and how that would affect her later on in her life. But the teacher here, how she dealt with her situation, because she wasn't prepared. But before that, you're going to hear from Debbie this morning. Those of you who don't know what self-harm is, we have pictures that we're going to show you and we're going to describe to our listening audience of people in various forms of self-harm. One of the simple things I'm sure that you've noticed, there are some people who I noticed there's a rubber band on their wrist. And they would pull the rubber band and slap their wrist with it very often. I tried that once and it didn't work for me because I find it very uncomfortable. But have you ever noticed, anybody out there ever noticed someone with a rubber band on their wrist and continue to pull it and hit their wrist, slap their wrist all the time, and sting their wrist all the time?
The rubber band, yeah, to feel that.
You know, that's self-harm too, a milder form of it. I didn't know that. But that's you're gonna hear from Debbie, and we thank Professor Hutchinson for assisting us with getting this person to speak with and willing to speak and share with you why she engaged in self-harm. A lot of our children are probably experiencing this, and we don't have a clue. When they put on their school clothes and come to school, or you see them playing with each other, or even when they get into fights.
And this is important because self-harm is a symptom of something. And often when people notice, or may notice signs of that someone is self-harming, they may, they may be afraid. It may, cause a little concern. You may laugh at the person, make jokes about them, call them names. Or you may just not say anything at all, not try to intervene. But it is a symptom of a mental illness, a mental disorder. And we on our Dependency would like to, encourage or to try to eliminate the kind of stigma and discrimination that happens to persons who may either diagnosed or not with a mental illness. And the kind of behaviors that mental ill health manifests, it can be scary, yes, but it's nothing to be afraid of necessarily. Once it is diagnosed, there are treatments available. So it's nothing to be afraid of, it's nothing to scorn. And there was a story in the papers this week, Garth, relating to mental ill health of a teenage boy who killed his mother.
17 years old.
In East Port of Spain. And he's now under observation at St. Anne's Hospital. Now, is he experiencing a psychotic event? Is he mentally ill? Was he ever diagnosed? What were the symptoms? Were there any signs? I mean, he's probably going to end up in prison for the rest of his life because of what he did, but could that have been prevented?
Because people often keep it a secret, but
yes,
the urge to self-harm isn't uncommon, especially in adolescents and young adults. Many overcome it with treatment, but those who can afford treatment, whether a person has recently started hurting themselves or has been doing so for a while, there's an opportunity to improve health and reduce the behavior, like talking to a specialist, a psychiatrist, or a trusted friend or family. Now, some people ask, what is really self-harm? So self-harm or self-injury means hurting yourself on purpose. One common method is cutting with a sharp object, i.e. a razor blade, knife, etc. But anytime someone deliberately hurts themselves, is classified as self-harm. Some people feel an impulse to cause burns, pull out hair, or pick at wounds to prevent healing. Extreme injuries can result in even broken bones. Hurting oneself or thinking about hurting yourself is a sign of emotional distress.
Mm-hmm.
These uncomfortable emotions may grow more intense if a person continues to use self-harm as a coping mechanism, learning other ways to tolerate the mental pain and to make you stronger in the long term. Self-harm also causes feelings of shame. The scars caused by frequent cutting or burning can be permanent. Drinking alcohol or doing drugs while hurting yourself increases the risk of more severe injury than intended. And it takes time and energy away from other things you value. Skipping classes to change bandages or avoiding social occasions to prevent people from seeing your scars is a sign that your habit is negatively affecting work and relationships. We're going to get into that deeper when we hear from Debbie this morning. So sit back. You have a chance to learn something again this morning. And we hope that this intervention would probably help you to identify someone in your family or you who have the propensity to self-harm. So after this break, We'll return with Debbie, who will join us via video. And you will see her picture up. Of course, we have to protect her identity, so we have a picture. And after this break, we'll speak with Debbie. Stay right there. Remember, you can join us on I-95.5, on Dependency Facebook page. That's EYE, on Dependency on Facebook. Some of you have easy access to YouTube channel of the same name. We'll be right back.
Some of us like to play games of chance, but remember, gaming should be fun, so don't get carried away. Play for a prize, but don't pay the price. Play for fun, but never for keeps. Play smart, but never play all. Winning isn't everything. If you or someone you know needs help, call our gambling addiction hotlines. Rebirth House 24-hour hotline 466-3146 or Serenity Place Empowerment Center for Women 794-7980. An initiative of NLCB and I on Dependency.
What if you can make a difference in the life of a child by simply taking one step? This November, let's shine once more at Guardian Group's Shine Charity 5K and 10K Walk and Run. And together, we can help secure hope for children most in need. Join us on Saturday, 26 November, Nelson Mandela Park. Race time, 4:25 p.m. Register now at www.runtoshine.com. And together, let's shine. Guardian Group. Live easy.
Listen now, I has noticed something about them new people and them up the road. Where's that? Girl, the man that he passing up and down in front of here with a set of woman.
I really noticed some woman living there, you know. And they can't even say as much as good morning.
Well, listen now, I wonder if it's human trafficking. You think it's that?
So, how can you spot and identify perpetrators and victims of trafficking? Many victims are found living and working together in the same place and sleep in shared and inappropriate spaces. Victims work excessively long hours. They often sleep in the daytime and work long nights. They are often escorted everywhere they go and may appear to be malnourished. They may show signs of physical abuse, drug and alcohol use, and may also appear withdrawn, fearful, or intimidated. Victims who are migrants are often not in possession of their identity or immigration documents and have irregular immigration status. Perpetrators can be male or female and may appear to be managing or controlling the victims. And they may even at times appear to be the victim's best friend, boyfriend, or employer.
We are the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Ion Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Ion Dependency, and we are again touching the topic of mental health, and this time the symptom of self-harm through the story of Debbie, who we have on the line. Thank you very much for joining us on I-95 and on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. So we have Debbie. Are you hearing us?
Not yet. And people, again, in the meantime, if you know someone who should be listening to this, because you're going to hear Debbie touch on childhood trauma and what she experienced. And a number of our children in Trinidad and Tobago are experiencing that. When they come out of home, you wouldn't know that. But because of even poverty and stress and misdirected anger, a lot of children are paying the price for that. So sometimes when you see, like I saw a video this morning, Miller sent for me of a schoolgirl. One is on the floor sitting and she is over her, raining kick and slap on this child. There's a recent video. And it is reminiscent of a mother doing the same thing. You're playing man, you're playing woman, and you're bad, and you're this, and just venting, using the child as a punching bag. And sometimes parents do that out of misdirected anger because the children's father not around, or he's not showing up with the money. They have to take him to court, and they're still not getting the money, and they have to make two ends meet, and you just break a simple cup in the house. A simple thing as that could trigger a mother to go berserk on a child and not understanding.
Yes, or he or she may be suffering from a mental illness as well. Could be
Probably
that.
she experienced that growing up too. So it's just passing on from one generation to the next.
Yes.
We have Debbie on the line. Debbie, good morning to you, and thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us this morning and letting our listeners and viewers into your life and the opportunity that they would have to learn from your life.
Yes, thanks again, Debbie. You want to start off by just telling us about what you experienced in your childhood. There was a traumatic event that you experienced, and you want to set that up for us?
I was sexually assaulted by a neighbor from, I believe, the ages of about 7, between 7 and 10 years old. And then I had a father that was verbally, emotionally, mentally abusive. And my mother had a lot of children to deal with, so it was basically different forms of abuse from the adults around me when I was a child, throughout my entire childhood.
Now, Debbie, how large was your family?
I have 5 sisters. 5 sisters, and my both parents were there. They were there, but they were not there.
Right. Now,
and where were you in the order? You first, last?
I am number 4.
Oh, yeah,
right. So let's go back a bit, right? You said at the age of around 7 there, you were sexually assaulted by a neighbor. Now, did your parents know, or did you let them know?
No. My mother only found out a few years ago, like 2 years ago.
Well, 2 years ago?
Yes.
Now, how did this happen and nobody knew? This person a person living alone, or did this person have a family as well?
This person had a family as well. They had 3 children, a wife. So it seemed like nothing because I was just another little child living around there. So it seemed like nothing, and my parents were preoccupied with other things. And I mean, every child is different, and I just guess I was the different one that was always alone, basically.
Right. Well, how did that affect you personally?
It happened, and did it happen at his place, or was he one of the people who would befriend your parents and say like you and would carry you out? How did it happen?
Well, he was the landlord actually where we rented, so it was basically the same house, just different apartments.
Oh, okay.
So yes, so it was. We went over sometimes. Well, most times never happened at our apartment.
And I mean, I hope you don't mind me pressing this, because I'm trying to to figure out, well, so what I'm a loss for words here, and I'm not really want to be a loss for words.
Scenario in terms of how these things happen, how easy
it is, so parents who listening could understand how easy this could happen.
So
did he groom you?
He had children as well, around the same age, maybe a little about 2 years younger than me. And we would go across to play.
Right.
And they had more money than us. They they had more things, they had better things, things that attracted the eyes of children, obviously. And he would use that to say, well, come, this is fun, and then he would do whatever he had to do while he was showing me all these fun things. And at that age, obviously, I didn't know anything about sex, and that this was wrong. So I just went along with it. To me, it was okay as an adult. You're supposed to be able to trust an adult. So whatever he's doing is not wrong. So that's how some parents wouldn't know, because your child is thinking just innocent. Most children are innocent, especially at that age. So they're not thinking along that line that this is not supposed to happen. They're just thinking that all adults should be trusted. And, it just go along with what they say or do.
Do you think he had abused other children, maybe his own or any other children?
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I can't say for certain, but I wouldn't doubt it.
And like as I asked before, well, how did that affect you as a child? I mean, you said you thought it was normal, but did it have any impact on your mood or behavior at that point?
At that point, I actually started masturbating and didn't know what it was, because I just knew that feeling was a good feeling. that somebody used to help me feel, So it affected me in that way, and I kept that a secret. I kept a lot of things to myself.
Yeah.
I had friends, in school, but I never felt like people actually really liked me. I was somewhat an outcast.
Right. Yeah, I understand that feeling. So you became a teenager, and something else happened in your teenage years. And how did you, when you eventually started exploring, intimate relationships, how do you think that affected that transition for you?
Well, I never felt like anyone was capable of loving me. And when I started to explore more sexually, I really, my intention was not to find love and settle down. My intention was to get a STD, HIV, and just die. That is what my exploring sex was about. It wasn't about finding love, building a relationship with somebody, creating a family. It wasn't about these things. It was just my sole intention was that in a few years I need to be dead.
Now, Debbie, I don't know. I just stepped out for a minute. I don't know if you had touched on this, but that trauma extended to your father. Did you all touch on that?
Yes.
Right. So before, yes, let's go back a bit to that, because you had a double whammy sort of.
Yes.
And what was the relationship like with your father?
My relationship with him, I think, was the best out of all the children, but obviously was very toxic. Why I would say it was the best out of all the other children is that everything that he wanted and everything that he needed, I gave into it. Because to me, it felt like that was the only way to get his love and get his attention. So to everybody else, I was his favorite. But I don't think that they realized that it was only because I said yes to everything for him. So, I mean, after a while, I couldn't. And there was an event where it is that he came home so drunk. He gave me a message over the phone to give my mom, and I did. And he didn't get what he wanted when he came home, and he started to break cupboards and broke my bedroom door open and ran down. I don't know what he would have done if he caught me. I ran to a neighbor's house and hid in the man's bedroom before he left. So it was somewhat to persons outside they would say okay, it was a good relationship, but obviously it wasn't.
But he didn't. He was just physically abusive, right? He wasn't sexually abusive or anything to you.
No.
Okay. So.
And what was your mother's reaction to this? Did she notice that he had a kind of different relationship with you as opposed to your other siblings?
I don't think she did. Being honest, and how I see my mom is that she had seen so much with him throughout the years that even though she had all these children, she did not know a lot of what was going on between them or in their lives. Because she had a lot to deal with my father, and then one of my other siblings, she was really sick as a baby. So I don't think she noticed things like that with us or with me.
Was he abusive to her as well, or no?
Yes, at that point in time, he used to beat her a lot.
And you would see that, and of course, it affected you to a point. How did you do in school? How was your journey through school?
My academically, I wasn't focused and I didn't do well initially. I was capable of it because I went back for 1 year and got 4 subjects in one, learning 2 new subjects in 1 year. So after I did pretty okay. But in school, as I said, I didn't have much friends, and even now, persons from school I don't connect with them. I see pictures of persons reunited and smiling and laughing and having fun, and I'm just not a part of that because I can't do it.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to I Dependency, and we are speaking with Debbie, and the topic today is self-harm and how it happens and why people do it. And I apologize to you listening. Remember, you can join us on Dependency's Facebook page, that's EYE on Dependency on Facebook or YouTube. And I apologize for that noise you're hearing next door. It's I hope it's not breaking your rhythm while you listen to Debbie's contribution. So Debbie, so you.
So yeah, we had spoken about her teenage years and the fact that when she began to become sexually active, her approach to it was not one of trying to build a relationship or find love. It was a form of self-harm, you could say, in a sense, because she was trying to contract a disease and eventually die from it. Where do you think those feelings stem from? Was it the original assault in your childhood, or do you think?
I think it was everything in my childhood leading up to. I never had I don't know why, but I always felt the need to have some sort of love from a male figure. And every time I noticed, what I noticed was that I needed to give something for them to show love, and even then, the love wasn't given fully. It was given based on what I could give, you know. So I just felt like this is no way for somebody to live. This is no way for somebody to be loved, you know, because it's not actual love.
So you were just what at the end of school. I see you left. Excuse me. You finished school, and in your young adult life, you decided, well, you're going to be promiscuous so that you could commit suicide. That was the plan.
Yes.
So you just go out and the first person you meet, you hook up with, and that's it. You just
Sometimes it was like that. Sometimes it was just somebody that knew me when I was going to school, and they were just waiting until I was legal age to sleep with me, and we did it and I got it over with.
No strings attached.
No strings attached.
And how long did that continue?
It went on for about a year and a half before I actually got pregnant. I did not contract any diseases. I actually got pregnant instead. So that sort of changed my course, my journey.
And how old were you at this point?
19.
You're 19.
Going to 20, yeah.
Wow. What was your reaction and what was your family's reaction to your being pregnant? How did you feel? Did you feel you wanted to bring a child into the world? What was your mental state at that point?
Honestly, I felt like bringing a child into the world, I would have somebody to love me, no matter what, because I would create this person. I am creating this person, and this person cannot not love me. So I was gonna do it, even though, and then also the father of my child told me that he wants a relationship with me and he really loves me and stuff. So I said, okay, maybe this is just a change. Something good is gonna happen. So I gave it a try.
So he was supportive, and so you, in your pregnancy, did you have any issues at all? How was that? I mean, because I know you said that, you felt excited about bringing a child into the world so that you would have someone someone to love you. What was that pregnancy like, and did anything and what was the child's early life like, and did you still have the father's support?
The pregnancy wasn't very easy because I wasn't living at home. I had to leave home. I tried to stay by another sister, and she told me I can't be there while I'm pregnant. And one sister took me in. She had very low income. She was renting a little apartment, a one-room apartment. And she took me in. I wasn't working at the time. The child's father wasn't working at the time. And sometimes, every day through the week, we are eating rice and tuna. And a tuna that you go in the fish market and buy. A tuna fried up. She was there, and even though it was a very sad situation, she always tried to make it, try to lighten it up and try to make it better, So the pregnancy, it wasn't perfect. And I did not realize that this is how life is. A lot of people don't show their children that, hey, this is life. They try to show them, to scare them with life. Okay, like having a child is, you can't party, you can't blind, you can't do this anymore. But they don't show them reality that, okay, milk and pampers, you're caring for a life. You have to show this child love. You have to give time. You have to give everything into this child. So for me, it just felt like, life was going to be good with this baby, but it didn't turn out that way. She, when I had her, I went by her father's family to live. And while I was pregnant, actually, they told me that the child is not his child.
Oh, Lord.
So I can't come there. It's only after she was born and she looked entirely like them that they welcomed us when she was 3 months old.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about your mom? How was she during your pregnancy? Was she supportive?
We didn't speak during the pregnancy because it was obviously something that she didn't want me to do. No parent wants a young child who is not responsible enough to have a child.
Yeah.
So we didn't speak during the pregnancy. For the last 3 weeks of the pregnancy, however, she allowed me to stay because my feet were just so swollen and I couldn't go anywhere by myself and stuff like that. So she allowed me to to stay with her. And then right after she was born, I stayed by my mother for the first 3 months. She helped me a lot, a great deal with her. Showed me the ropes, showed me how to care for her and all of that.
Wow. So, I mean, you're a teenage mother. You're caring for a child, not living in your child's father's house. That must have been, and neither of y'all are working. That must have been very stressful. How did you, as an individual, how did you deal with it?
I cried a lot. I contemplated suicide a lot because I found out after that, throughout the end of my pregnancy, and soon after I delivered my daughter, that he was speaking to other women. So it was difficult for me, but I felt like I couldn't do anything better because I got myself into this situation, you know. So around that time is when the thoughts started to come in that I just didn't want to live, even though I had this baby to live for. I would be any good to her because I can't care for myself. I can't care for, if I can't care for myself, how am I going to care for her? You know? That's when the self-harming became a lot more after I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. So it's kind of raised everything.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Iron Dependency, and we are speaking with Debbie, who is taking us through the steps of how she started self-harming. And we've just been joined in studio by Professor Hutchinson, who has been very busy this weekend, apart from having a busy week. And, you know, Professor, we want to thank you so much for giving of yourself to Trinidad and Tobago in the manner in which you do. You know, always willing to give us your assistance and your knowledge, and share your knowledge with Trinidad and Tobago and prepare us. Because there's a lot happening. It's a lot to unpack in Trinidad and Tobago right now. And we thank you very much for affording us this privilege once again.
Thank you. And good morning to all your listeners and viewers.
Yes, as you know, Professor Hutchinson was with us a couple of weeks ago when we spoke with Terrian and her child, her son, who committed suicide, and a client of Professor, and Debbie so too. And we are happy that we can share this moment with you all again. It's a teaching moment, and as I said, we are going to touch on that incident at Rose Hill and compare that to another video that we have for you to understand what trauma is and how long lasting it can be. And we can ask Professor probably to share his thoughts on it as well. So, Debbie, yes, we could take a break.
Give Debbie a chance to collect her thoughts, and when we come back, we'll start to talk about that period which you experienced in the postpartum depression, and started, if you did start to self-harm or have thoughts of self-harm, and we'll take it from there now that we have the professor in studio.
Yes, and what instrument you used, and you know, people are cut from a razor blade could make some of us freak out. And imagine someone sitting with a razor blade and just striping themselves with it on their forearm or whatever, and what Debbie experienced and what people called her, and the jokes that were made about her. Remember, for those of you on YouTube, please remember to like, subscribe to our channel, so that
Facebook too.
And on Facebook as well, and you can get notifications every time we go live, and because we have lots of stuff in store for you. So stay right there. We'll be back with Debbie and Professor Hutchinson.
Thank you for calling the Counter-Trafficking Unit of Trinidad and Tobago. How may I help you?
The Trinidad and Tobago's Counter-Trafficking Unit, also called the CTU, was established through an Act of Parliament the Trafficking in Persons Act, Chapter 1210, or the TIPS Act. We are a specialized, multidimensional, civilian-led agency under the Ministry of National Security, responsible for the daily operations of the counter-trafficking response of the Government of Trinidad and Tobago. We implement government policies developed by the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons, effective identification of victims and witnesses, prevention of trafficking, protection and prosecution, all through
Some of us like to play games of chance, but remember, gaming should be fun, so don't get carried away. Play for a prize, but don't pay the price. Play for fun, but never for keeps. Play smart, but never play all. Winning isn't everything. If you or someone you know needs help, call our gambling addiction hotlines. Rebirth House 24-hour hotline 466-3146 or Serenity Place Empowerment Center for Women 794-7980. An initiative of NLCB and Eye on Dependency.
What if you can make a difference in the life of a child by simply taking one step? This November, let's shine once more at Guardian Group's Shine Charity 5K and 10K Walk and Run. And together, we can help secure hope for children most in need. Join us on Saturday, 26 November, Nelson Mandela Park. Race time, 4:25 p.m. Register now at www.runtoshine.com. And together, let's shine. Guardian Group. Live easy.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on 95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Ion Dependency, and again, we are tackling the subject of mental health. This time, another disorder that one of the symptoms is self-harm, and we're talking this morning with Debbie, and we have in studio Professor Hutchinson, who has interacted with Debbie and actually recommended her to speak with us this morning so that we all can learn a little bit more about the specific disorder that she was diagnosed with and the phenomenon of self-harm, which is one of the symptoms of that disorder and is something that we may notice other people are doing or have been doing, and we don't quite know how to respond to it. And Debbie is going to tell us now, if she's back on with us.
I am.
She's going to explain to us how her thoughts and emotions developed into her beginning to self-harm, and of course about how she eventually was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. So thank you very much for tuning in on I-95 and on Facebook and YouTube. Professor, while we wait on Debbie to rejoin us, could you tell us a little bit about borderline personality disorder and the kinds of events that might bring it on?
I guess in 2 words, it would be abuse and trauma.
Right.
In your childhood and developmental years, any kind of abuse, but more so sexual abuse, and also the experience of trauma. Again, trauma, whether it's violence, whether it's bullying, whether it's being exposed to an environment where there's violence, where you lose important people in your family or community circle to violence, or you lose them unexpectedly. All those 2 factors, I think, are the biggest in predisposing people to developing this kind of personality this personality set, these set of traits that make their personality more likely to engage in pathological behavior.
So that it is sort of a response to that trauma your brain is causing you to...
Well, your personality is something that develops as you grow up. Of course, it's also influenced by your genes. And again, even your genes, your parents' genes are their parents' genes, and so this is the whole thing about transgenerational experiences and how it's handed down. And then the experiences you have. And of course, if you have parents who are troubled, who are themselves struggling with mental health issues, who are in relationships where they're being abused, then they also obviously will be affected, and that will affect the way they parent their children.
So, Professor, this is not really a joke when people say that from our ancestors come right down, that trauma could have been handed down from generation to generation.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes people dismiss that as a joke. Forget slavery. Slavery was this, but it is real.
It is real. It is real. And what is, when people think of your genes, they think about them like, the color of your eyes, or whether you'll be tall or short, but your genes also affect your behavior, or your ability to choose behaviors when faced with different options and when put in different situations. And if you've been exposed to trauma, the choices you make will be influenced by that exposure. For example, you might be more anxious, more fearful, and because you're more fearful, you're less decisive. You would choose safety versus risk, and those things are passed on.
So okay, let's look at, for instance, people who live in depressed communities then. Is there a connection with how the youngsters especially behave when they come out into the world, like they go to school and they get into fights and they're always in trouble? Is there a connection?
Yes, because being in the community in and of itself, creates a kind of mindset, because you're surrounded by deprived environment, squalor sometimes, disorder, chaos, noise, pollution. So those things are acting on you on one hand, and then you have a line now where your parents and their parents have been traumatized in a variety of ways and have come to view the world in a particular way because of that trauma. And they're the genes that they pass on to you, but then it's also the atmosphere and the environment they create for you to grow up in.
So a pregnant mother who engages the neighbor in a cussing out every day and fight and drinking and smoking, and that child is already
traumatized even before they're born. And I mean, that is one of the reasons you find that, as you say, there are communities where there'll be generations of people experiencing the same things, and in some instances getting worse.
Yes, because and I see it. I see some people engage, some pregnant mothers, especially. They don't care. They don't business. They will go and engage in a fight and cuss out with and while they're pregnant, and not understanding that child is hearing and feeling what's taking place too.
Exactly. And of course, that's also the issue with drug use.
Yes.
Drinking, smoking. It's also affecting, and it's now when we think of problems, we think about them in broad terms. So, for example, we might think about a child being disabled, and you say, okay, well, the child is born and it's fine. There's no sign of disability, but the child might be more irritable than average. Might cry a lot, or might be more difficult in terms of getting on with other children, and those kinds of effects now impact on how the child grows up.
So we have Debbie back with us.
We do.
Debbie, are you there?
Hi.
Right.
Yeah, I'm here.
So
Okay, great.
let's talk about now when you decided that you wanted to harm yourself. We have Professor in with us here this morning, and those of you who are just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, of course, and we're speaking with Debbie, who's going to explain now why she chose to self-harm. And self-harm means cutting yourself, and we have some images to show you from Debbie herself and from other people who have engaged in self-harm. Professor Natasha, Debbie, I don't like pain. A cut or anything could affect me for days, and I just cannot fathom someone sitting with a razor blade, putting their forearm on a table and just going like this, just cutting it with a razor blade. We know how painful that can be, but people like Debbie do it on a daily basis. Debbie, tell us about that. How did you start doing that?
I first started actually in secondary school. That first time was actually took up my risk to kill myself. And I realized that, okay, skin is really tough. And it takes a while before you could reach to that point to cut a vein or whatever, to kill yourself. And I realized that even though it didn't serve its purpose, it did feel a little better. I did feel some sort of relief, you know. I didn't do it continuously for some years. After my first child, is when it really started. It became something that it was like a drug. It was like a high. So whenever I felt that sad, overwhelming feeling, I needed that pain, and it wouldn't be okay. I take a razor blade and I just make one cut and I just get that high. I have to make a few cuts in order to. I just feel one by one, like each problem is lifted off of me. You know.
I still don't understand.
Wow. I mean, I don't know.
No, seriously.
No, Debbie, not to make light of it or anything, but we, if you can, describe for us how the physical pain was easing the emotional pain that you were going through. I don't know if you could find the ways to explain that.
Is it seeing the blood or the cut itself or what? Tell us.
The pain itself together with seeing that blood sometimes come up in like a bubble or even start running down. It just eases. I don't know what it is, but it just eases. It feels like you're carrying a bag with lots of books and somebody's just taking out each book one by one and just being lifted and feel lighter.
Right.
The pain, yes, it hurts because I mean any cut hurt, but it doesn't hurt in a way that, oh my goodness, I need this pain to stop. It's like, okay, good, this pain is helping my inside.
Let me ask you something. So, you're not freaked out about going by the dentist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you? Does it scare you to go by the dentist? I mean, to extract a tooth. That's a breeze for you, is it?
It scares me sometimes, yes, but not to the point that it's not a big deal. Because to me, pain is just pain. It's not nothing that is.
That's the point.
It won't last, basically.
And it's not about hating yourself while you're doing it. And I'll probably get the professor to elaborate, but every cut is what you're thinking about when you're doing that.
I just want to feel better. I just want to stop feeling what I'm feeling.
And now you're doing this while you're going to work, right? You're employed.
Yes.
How did it affect your work?
When I started, I wore long sleeves and sweaters to cover it up because I knew it was normal. You didn't see other people with scars on their hand. So I would cover it up, especially when I have fresh cuts. I would cover it up, bandage it up, and then put on something that would cover the bandage because people ask questions. After a while, after getting help, it didn't matter to me if persons asked questions. I would just answer accordingly to how I feel. However, I feel on that day I would respond a certain way.
All right. Well, Professor, could you come in here and give us your perspective on why self-harm is a relief to persons who are going through that psychological pain?
Well, it works in multiple ways. As Debbie was saying, when you have emotional pain, it's not something it's not something tangible. It's something you feel, but you can't make it like an object that you could touch and
remove.
When you cut yourself, the physical pain becomes a means to extinguish the emotional pain, because that physical pain is something you could see and something you could feel. So, and the feeling of that, although it is painful, as she said, is less than the emotional pain. Because part of the distress that comes from the emotional pain is that inability to express it, that inability to even quantify it, to say, well, it's just this, because the emotional pain is so powerful that you just feel desperate to do something. And the act of cutting, much like how you would have an abscess and you cut it and you drain it. Cutting it and draining it is painful, but it relieves the pain of the abscess. So you have a pain from cutting it, but it's a less pain than the pain from the abscess. So it's like an emotional abscess that you're draining through cutting. That's on one hand. On the other hand, looking at the blood becomes its own fascination. And that fascination then serves as a kind of distraction from the emotional pain. So it's like if you're distressed and you're watching some kind of movie, you kind of taken away from your distress to focus on what's going on the screen. Here you focus, as she said, the blood's running down your hand, so that you become consumed by that, so the pain recedes into the distance. And then thirdly, we also have to remember that not all pain is negative. There's pleasurable pain. People can experience pain. For example, some women, when they're making children at childbirth, they say it's painful, but it's a pleasurable kind of pain, seeing the baby come out and, so pain is in and of itself. I mean, that's a discussion we could have. But pain can be pleasurable or can be experienced